Hey, what's up, Tech Boy? So, today I want to talk about Butterflaps. Some people might refer to them as Butterfloops. Talk about distinguishing the two in a bit. Seems a lot of people are getting into it online. Talked to a few people in my local community about it, and it's one of the things, well, I learned it 2 flames ago from Eli Harrod. I saw him do it. He was trying to show me how to do it. I didn't really get it. And it was one of those things where I kind of had to take it home and really figure out how to do it. But it came along, and I've since learned a couple of variations, and kind of, I think, a way maybe to teach it now. So I wanted to share that. So this is what a butterflap looks like. A couple of characteristics of a butterflap. So it's not inverted. I'll talk more about that in a second. If you can see, the knot is really mobile. As you can see, it's traveling up and down the tethers. I bring my hands together and I can have the knot really close to the knobs. I can pull it apart so that the knot travels down the tethers and more closer to the poi heads. So that's a cool element. It's not really stuck in place. It can sort of traverse the lengths of the tether, which allows for a cool effect. It just feels like doing a butterfly. You know, it has to be atomic. The planes are different, just like, you know, a non-tangled butterfly. You have to have non-parallel planes in order for them not to hit one another. The reverse direction butterflap tends to be easier. So if you're spinning the poi upwards, reverse, whatever you want to call it, that one is going to be easier. It sort of tangles on the top side. You can bring it down. You can do a downwards butterfly version, but it feels more like the tangle happens down here rather than at the top. It's really hard to put into words, but I have seen most people agree that the reverse or upwards spinning one is easier. So, I guess a note on why it's a butterflap and not a butterfloop, at least in my conception. So, flap is kind of drawing an analog to air wrap as opposed to a hyperloop. A hyperloop is like this. It is inverted. How do I know it's inverted? Because it's created a knot that when I pull apart, it goes into a orbital. It's just the same knot that is in a barrel roll. Whereas a air wrap never knots, it never inverts, it just hits and untangles. It's what an air wrap is this. So why is it not inverted, right? Well, an air wrap is just a weave. It's a weave that happens on the inside space, and it happens to utilize the tangles touching one another, the tethers touching one another, creating a tangle. But you can sort of do the same thing without the tethers touching. So instead of the tethers touching here, I can just use my hands touching. And it's the same concept as doing a weave, where we have a weaves utilize, you know, twisting on one side, flipping to the other and untwisting, twisting on one side, flipping to the other, untwisting, twisting on one side, flipping to the other, untwisting. And there's this constant twisting, flipping, reversing the twist, untwisting, twisting again. So, whereas a weave, generally we utilize the wheel plane, and the twisting and flipping happens on one side of the body and flips to the other. We can also do a weave in a wall plane, and we can twist and come to the inside, untwist and come to the front side, and do this kind of thing. So that's what happens in an air wrap, actually. It's just twisting in front here. We flip, but instead of flipping to the other side of our body, we're flipping down into the inside space, and then we untwist. So we come in front of us, we hit the twist, we flip, and then we untwist on the inside. So after you hit an air wrap, it comes comes to the inside. So I'm not going to go very much further than that. I have another video on it, which I can put in the description. So it never becomes inverted. So whereas a hyperloop is inverted because instead of the twisting and untwisting, we get to this point where we add a knot and then we sustain that knot on the inside space. Now can you do a butterflap? Can you invert a butterflap? Like you can invert an air wrap to make it a hyperloop. I think the answer is yes, but I learned this from Arashi a year or two ago. If you do a butterflap and you sustain it, it continuously adds twists, so it's going to get more and more knotted, and doesn't have a very good functional usage in poi. If we try to bring this butterflap between my arms to create it inverted, it's just going to create knots, and I don't know. I mean, there might be a way to create some sort of utility out of it, but butterflaps are way cooler, so let's just learn those. So here's my building up to the framework and concept behind butterflaps, how you can learn them. And the concept is going to be threading the needle in together time reverse. So that's actually kind of difficult for me. I'm used to threading the needle in downwards. But as I mentioned previously, the upwards version of the butterflap is going to be easier. So if you want to familiarize yourself with the together time, thread the needle in reverse butterfly, it might help. But basically the concept behind threading the needle is you're in opposites and you're crossing the poi over one another. So if I spin the poi in reverse and I'm right here and I sort of come into this space where my arm gets in the way, I'm going to wrap up. But in order to barely miss the arm, you have to thread, which is whenever you you come in this space where you're at high risk for tangling or hitting yourself, but you move just out of the way to thread down the needle, thread down the arm to avoid that collision from happening. And this is the concept that happens with threading. Threading, in the more general sense, is just kind of having different planes, or the poi operating different planes and one kind of coming in front of the other one. Anyways, so what happens when we do this, we spin again, we get the arm in the way, we scoot down the arm, and we sort of trace the arm, as thread the needle tends to be like a body tracer. We get to this point, where we're clear now of all potential collisions, and we can spin freely. And then we pause this one, and then it's now the other poi that's going to thread down the arm to here. So I guess this is like a thread the needle step by step. But point being, we're coming down the arm, and then we get to this point where we're free to spin freely without collision. We skip right over the poi, right? Because we're in a plane that is parallel to the poi itself, that the paused poi is occupying, I suppose. But what happens in a butterflap is we thread down the arm, but we don't go past the whole poi. We get stuck right along the path of the tether. So it's almost as if I were able to hold this poi out here, straight out. We thread down the arm, but we don't just pass right over the poi. We just get stuck on the poi there. So I don't know if that makes sense at all, but here is it in function and how you can get there. So instead of operating with parallel planes and doing this threading, I want you to try and take your left hand, your left poi, and spin it horizontally like such, so that it's spinning outward from your chest. You never have to bring it up above your hands here. Let's just keep it down low. And what you want to do is get into a together time where the poi meet in the center. And what you're going to do is just like as if you had the vertical planes when you're doing the thread here, when you have your arms separate, but you can bring your right hand to the point where it's going to converge and you have the thread down. Do the same thing with the atomic planes. So one's horizontal here. I'm going to thread down and come to here. And if you pull your hands apart, you should maybe have some sort of collision going on where you have the tethers tangled, and this should be a way to enter into the butterflap. So, once again, we're spinning low, horizontal, dangly, outwards with our left. We spin vertical plane with our right. We sync in together time. I suppose this is like a tog L time or something, but it's together because it's meeting at the center, right? And then we're going to converge our hands so that our right hand comes in and threads down. But since the poi is on a horizontal place, it's going to be outwards. And just like we were talking about before, we're threading down the arm, but we skip over the poi. But in this case, the poi's out. So we're threading onto the poi. The poi's tether, that is. And then once you get to that point, you sort of get a collision going there. Just sort of maintain that together timingness. You know, keep your timing together and keep them bouncing. Keep the planes atomic. And you can get the butterflap up to, you know, a vertical place, just kind of like a butterfly, but you can also just maintain one of them being horizontal with the other one vertical. In fact, it might be a little bit easier that way. Obviously, you want to explore both. So, I'm not sure if that is going to help or not. You'd have to let me know. But I just thought it was a concept of way to get to the butterflap. So if you're able to get a feel for how it feels, you should just be able to enter it with ease. Again, explore pulling the knot up and down the strings. Explore breaking into a split time place. A couple tricks, one trick that Eli showed me was bringing it to the inside. So this is like coming in an outside space. We can bring it to the inside, and then it does a sort of, I don't know what you call that, but the inside space, then you can bring it back out again. And a trick that Joe Graff showed me, which is pretty cool, is if you do the butterflap and you lift your right hand up, like so, you sort of go into a horizontal hyperloop place. So here, and then you can kind of come out in a downwards butterfly. So that one, I just sort of had to watch it a few times and try and mimic it until it happened. But I realized I was lifting up the wrong hand for a while, and then after I lifted up my right hand, it started working for me. So, I think that's pretty much it. Another way you can try to get the butterflap, I was saying, is just having the poi cross each other, making an X. You know, just like you hit an air wrap at an X, you also want to hit the butterflap right there, and then just kind of maintaining the butterfly spin after you hit the tangle. But anyways, they're a pretty intricate type of move that is going to just might just take some practice. You might get it instantly, you might not get it at all, and it might take a couple weeks. It all depends, but you know, give it a try. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with tangles, and opposites tangles were a bit elusive for me, and it took me a while till I got a hold of them. But I had a lot of fun with them since I had, and hope you were able to grab something from this. That's about it.